Hello and welcome to podcast 6. This podcast has got a slightly different slant from a lot of the others that we've done, as today I've got the interviewers being turned into interviewers turned into interviewees. As I'm joined by 3 members of the media. I've got Federica Bedendo from Newsquest, who writes in the Times and Star, the Whitehaven News and the Evening News and Star. We have Samantha Parker from ITV Border, who works on a lot of the stories right across West Cumbria. And I'm also joined by Bob Cooper from the BBC, who you will have seen on the Sunday Politics, Look North, and heard on BBC Radio Cumbria. Welcome to today's podcast. After 5 years of being on the other end of the microphone and the camera being interrogated by you, today's my opportunity to get my own back after 5 years. But no, it's going to be really interesting to understand the current crisis from a different perspective and how it's affecting different parts. Samantha, we'll start with you. How has the job changed for you and your colleagues during this pandemic?
I mean, it's changed a lot. For me personally, I've always worked from home. For the past 10 years covering West Cumbria, I've always been based from my spare bedroom or the kitchen. So that for me hasn't been a big shock. But for a lot of colleagues who are based in the office in Carlisle, they've really had to change the way they work. They've had to get to grips with the technology that will enable them to work from home. And there are now only 2 people in the Carlisle office, the news editor and the programme editor, and they're obviously adhering to strict social distancing measures there. Going out on jobs has changed very much. Most of the time we're conducting interviews by Zoom or by Skype. We're now sort of looking at it's more important to get the message out there than the production values, which we used to put quite high on our agenda. So if it is, or it does come across on TV as radio for television, that's okay, because the most important thing for us at the moment is making sure that people are informed. We are still out and about. We weigh up whether it's an essential journey for us to go and cover a story. And when we are doing that, we're wearing PPE, we're wiping everything down, we're making sure that the cameraman and the reporter stay, the 2 meters apart from each other, as well as from any interviewees. We don't use personal microphones anymore. We don't go anywhere near people. We don't shake hands. Everything is done with the social distancing in mind. And so that's quite hard. That's been a big change, because part of the joy of the job is meeting people, friendly faces, getting to hear their stories, shaking hands, having a bit of a laugh and a joke, and that's harder now. But we are still getting out and about when needed to. But the reaction of the public has been different. Some people, wondering why we're out, who we are, what we're doing. And once you explain to people that we are key workers, we are allowed to be out and about, it's all fine. But sometimes you do feel a bit of resistance and a bit of suspicion there, and that's changed. When you're used to working in the community where people sort of embrace you as being their local reporter, that bit for me has been quite hard when you've hit resistance from people.
Yeah, Bob, pretty much the same for you, I guess, because you're the roving reporter really for the BBC. You're out and about and in the local communities, interviewing people face to face. What changes are you experiencing in your own and your colleagues' work patterns at the moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm working entirely from home at the moment, Mike. I'm not doing any work for TV currently, and partly that's because the Sunday morning politics programme, Politics North, that's now gone to a sort of national show, Politics England, temporarily. So I'm completely concentrating on radio. And I guess one of the things about radio is you can do a lot more of it without actually having to go out and do things on the scene, if you like. So we can do things over the phone. We can do things on Skype as well. But one of the things that we have always liked to do on Radio Cumbria is go out and do those kind of interviews in quality on the scene, the sort of scene sets, so that we can get out and about around the county and bring the county to the listener as well. And that's something that I've not been able to do recently. My colleagues haven't been able to do either. So we're having to find different ways of working instead. So, for example, we're getting people to send kind of scene sets and descriptions of what they can see in their part of the county into us, rather than actually being able to be there ourselves and describe it. But luckily for me, I mean, I'm fully set up here with a work laptop. I can connect to the network and so on, and I'm able to broadcast as well from home using an app on my phone. So I've been live on air kind of every day really since the lockdown started, but just doing it all from here, which is a bit of a strange experience, but it's definitely something that I'm getting used to, but obviously missing having that usual kind of interaction with colleagues that you would have. And the ones who do have to go into the office, they're having to observe strict social distancing as well. So it's a very strange time.
You made an interesting point there, you know, particularly on the Sunday Politics there, about becoming a national programme, which kind of, you know, takes the locality away from that, because that programme is sort of done on a local basis. What do you feel is the importance of local news at the moment during this this period of time?
Well, I think it's absolutely crucial. I mean, I think in times of crisis, that's when people really rely on local news services, whether it's local radio, whether it's local papers, local TV, and they really want to have trusted news sources that talk about their communities rather than just hearing about national stuff. And you know, when you think back to Storm Desmond and the floods we've seen in the county, you know, those are other examples of where local media has really come to the fore and played a really crucial role in terms of, you know, not just providing information to people, but also kind of being part of the community and bringing people together. So, you know, one of the things that we're doing on Radio Cumbria, for example, is the Make a Difference campaign, which are these bulletins that we do, where it just provides information about local charities, volunteer groups, you know, options for people who need help, how they can get in touch, or if people need donations of things, then they can put the call out for that on local radio. And a lot of the feedback that we've had from listeners has been that they really value that, and that they want us to keep doing it. And it's a kind of timely reminder of how important local news outlets are.
Federica, all your news stories are of a local element. You know, how's things changed in the written press in terms of your working patterns and how you source your news?
Yeah, well, very much like Sam and Bob already said, it is a bit weird not being able to go out and meet people and see things for yourself. And also you get a feeling that you have to rely a little bit more on other people helping you to understand what is happening and finding out what is happening, because, you know, normally we're out and about in the community, we go to council meetings, we go to events, lots of different things, and you spot things on your way to and from those appointments, but you also get an opportunity to see a lot of people. And, you know, maybe before a council meeting, a councillor will say, oh, have you heard about such and such happening? So that's how you find out. Or you'll nip and get a coffee and someone takes that opportunity when they see you to tell you about something that's happening. Obviously, that's really difficult now because we're not going out. So we do rely a lot more on people getting in touch with us and letting us know because we can't be there. So obviously, a lot of the things, you know, still work with ringing contacts, and people do get in touch with us on social media, emails and that kind of stuff. You know, that's always been part of it, but now more than ever, it's absolutely turned into our day-to-day lives. Also, it's interesting, you know, you said we just do local stuff, which obviously is really important at this moment in time. And we're trying to really be there, not just for people and community groups, letting them know what help is available to them, but also with businesses, because they've been really badly affected. Well, a lot of them have been badly affected by the coronavirus. So we're trying to still talk about them so that people have them fresh in mind, so that when restrictions are lifted, those can get back on their feet. But for me in particular, it's been a little bit of a novelty doing some national news as well, because obviously people, you know, they may well choose to read a national newspaper or watch the national news, but they do come to us a lot. So we have been providing that service as well, which, you know, it's very unusual for me. But I guess, you know, it's a learning curve, and we want people to be able to access as much information as possible. So we're doing everything we can to do that for them.
Well, of course, you know, locally, the virus has hit Cumbria harder than I think anywhere else in the country per head of population. You know, are you being asked about that on a regular basis?
Yeah. Sorry, was that a question for me, Mike?
Yes, it was, Fed, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people are craving information. And I think there is an element of, I want that information and I want it all, but there is also an element of, you know, we do get a lot of comments, for example, on social media, and people telling us what they want to hear. And sometimes it can get a little bit frustrating, because, for example, when we publish the figures about the deaths nationally and locally, people want to know more, they want to know exactly where they are, but it's very difficult. You know, all of us, yourself as well with the council, you'll know, you know, you've been thrown into this as much as us, and you're reacting to it, and we're trying to work together to get all that information to people the best we can. But it's not always possible to get the amount of detail that people want to hear, and it's frustrating on both sides. And, you know, I don't think that the authorities or the journalists are trying to keep anything from the public at all at this moment in time. It is just trying to find a way of getting that information quickly and effectively to people. But that's also been an aspect that I've found particularly difficult. As a local journalist, I'm sure Sam and Bob will agree, you deal with death, for example, a lot. Well, frequently, I would say. So you have to report on, you know, accidents or different kind of things that happen in the community. And you often find yourself doing tribute pieces, for example, speaking to bereaved families about the loss of their loved ones. But being in a situation where every day you're talking about death has been really different and really difficult as well. And I think at this moment in time, as journalists, we're just doing it. We're just getting on with it. But I think at some point it will hit us. You know, the effect that this could have is having on our communities, but also on our own sort of mental health in a way.
Absolutely. Sam, you were very much a feature reporter on ITV Border, doing, you know, a whole range of different stories. You know, at the moment, when you switch the TV on, it just seems to be corona, corona, corona. You know, how difficult at the moment is it to get other news on the agenda and get other stories? You know, the nice sort of stories that you're often involved in.
Well, I think just, you know, Federica put her finger on it before. People just have a thirst for information, or they did at the beginning of this. They very much wanted to know how many people were dying, where the virus was, how it was going to affect them. Did they live in an area that was untouched, etc.? You know, to make themselves feel better, feel safer, informed, and that was really important. And at the beginning, you know, we were very much interviewing the Colin Cox of Public Health. We were Andy Slattery from the police, and they were really important interviews to get out there at the time. But as time's gone on, I think that while that thirst is still there, there is now a desire to see that normal life or happier times are coming, or that people are making the best of it and people are supporting each other. So those positive stories are actually quite easy to find. People are coming to us with them because it's what they want to see. Of course, they still want the top of our programs to very much have all the information that they need, but they also now want to see, you know, other parts of the county, see how people are coming together. I think, you know, I moved here 10 years ago. I was thrown straight into the Keswick bus crash, and then the Derek Bird shootings, and then floods. The communities in Cumbria, and of course we cover southern Scotland too, they are amazing at coming together in a crisis, and we've once again seen that. People are talking to their neighbours for the first time, and they're really coming together to help people who are poorly or have to self-isolate or shield. And it has been, I think the best part about that about this whole situation, has been to tell those stories. And it was nice for me today. I was in Gosforth talking about how they're going to celebrate VE Day, which of course is still happening on Friday, and we still need to mark it and acknowledge it and celebrate it. And I think as we move further down the line with the coronavirus and lockdown, it's great to see those stories of communities really coming out to the front.
Yeah, I think there's some absolutely fantastic community stories emerging, and the way people are pulling together, working together, fantastic. Bob, you're very much politically focused, and yeah, I think it's fair to say there's been very little politics, you know, party political politics over the last few weeks. You know, is that your experience? And you know, where's the news taking you now, without that combative political arena that you would normally be working in?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I think the general approach of opposition parties since all this started has been to be the critical friend, the sort of constructive opposition. I think that's very much the approach that Labour are taking at the moment, and being reluctant to attack the government in what's seen as too partisan a way, because actually the polling seems to indicate that most of the public want to see constructive criticism, yes, but not the idea that anyone might be politicising or taking advantage of what's a really deep crisis for the country. Now, of course, in Cumbria, when it comes to our local MPs, the vast majority of the Conservative MPs now, we've just got one Liberal Democrat MP who also has been taking that kind of constructive criticism approach. So I think you're certainly seeing less party politics, but I also think it's quite interesting in terms of the accessibility of politics, in terms of the fact that local councils are now holding their meetings online, which Copeland did for the first time yesterday, which went fairly well. And also Parliament is operating remotely as well now. And that kind of, you know, it has two sides to it from the point of view of a journalist. This sort of picks up on something that Federica was saying before, that, you know, in the past, you would go along to council meetings and you might be able to have a friendly chat with someone. You might be able to get a comment from them after the meeting or before the meeting or whatever. Whereas now, in one sense, it's more convenient in that I can now watch council meetings from my own home and record them online and so on, and take clips from them. But at the same time, it means I can't go directly to the councillors and ask them questions. So that's interesting, and it will be interesting to see as well, when all this is over, when the lockdown is lifted, how many local authorities and to what extent Parliament keep on doing these things in this kind of accessible way that means that people can just sort of follow the processes of democracy from the comfort of their own homes, and whether that's something that, you know, will be a kind of permanent change in the way politics works.
Yeah, certainly up in Carlisle, I noticed that 300 people had viewed the council meeting. You know, if you got 300 turning up actually at a council meeting, you know, that would be like a record attendance. So do you think long term it could create more engagement and you know, the knock-on effect, you know, improve the performance of council councils and councillors, because they're becoming more accountable to a public who can see, get a clearer view of what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I didn't know that 300 people had watched the meeting last night at Carlisle, and that surprises me, actually. That's more than I would have expected. So yeah, I think that's really interesting, and obviously, the more people who can watch decision making in action, and understand the kind of issues that local councillors are grappling with when they make those decisions. That's good in terms of the public understanding, and it's also good if people are watching and scrutinising, and like you say, that can help improve the performance of councils and other public bodies, because obviously the more people who are paying attention to what they're doing, the more likely they are to be sort of making sure they do a good job. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. If it's something that leads to greater engagement with local democracy, that would certainly be a good thing. But who knows how it's all going to turn out.
Federica, at the paper, you've been doing your heroes of the week and that type of thing, where you've been recognising members of the public who's really stood up, and there's been so many of them. That must be, one of the more refreshing parts of the job at the moment, and the more, uplifting and morale boosting when you're seeing this sort of thing going on in the communities.
Absolutely, definitely. That, as you say, has been really refreshing, because it's a very difficult situation for everyone to be in. But to really see, like Sam was saying, I'm not from Cumbria originally, I'm from Italy. I moved here 5 years ago, and that is one of the things I love about this area. People do come together. I've never seen anything like it. And, this coronavirus has been awful for everyone. But you just see people stepping up, people that maybe have never volunteered. I set up these groups, and they're helping the neighbours, they're helping people they've never met before, they're getting to know people in their own community. And I think that, has been one of the most enjoyable things for me to do, speaking to all these people and telling their stories and helping them reach out to others. And I think that's one of the things that local newspapers do really well, which is to celebrate our local heroes, local media in general. And one thing that I find really sweet is that when you speak to these people, they do tend to take the time to thank you and thank you for the work that you do, which is something, journalism is a bit of a thankless task a lot of the times. But it's really nice to see people, sharing these comments. And there's other things that we're doing as well to sort of, bring a smile to people's faces. For example, we started doing this feature about weddings. So we're asking people to share memories and pictures of their wedding if they got married recently. I was speaking to a gentleman, which is featured in the Whitehaven news this week, and he was absolutely over the moon to be able to share those pictures again with his family and his friends. And that's really nice. And, it's just part of what we do.
Sam, people are talking, post this crisis, it's, the working environment and all sorts of different aspects of everyday life are going to change permanently as a result of this. And certainly in your line of work, doing meetings like this for efficiency and logging on to council meetings gives you real-time access, but it does take away the personability and the vibe that you get from meeting face to face. How do you anticipate life changing professionally post-crisis?
I mean, I think until it is deemed completely safe, I don't even know if we can ever be completely free of the coronavirus unless, a vaccine is rolled out to everybody. I think for us, the social distancing measures that we have in place will have to continue and are likely to continue until otherwise told by people who know better than myself whether it's safe to relax the rules that we've put in place. But we really need to make sure that when we're going to interview people, we're keeping them safe. And I do think that the use of video conferencing will remain for a while yet. And those measures that we've already got in place when we are going to meet people face to face. They will remain for a while yet. And I think if lockdown is relaxed and we're allowed a little bit more freedom of movement, then we will get to go to more places and maybe interview more people, and hopefully that can creep back in. You know, we'll be seeing people face to face while maybe adhering to set rules from ITV. We will be able to have that laugh and a joke with people that we're interviewing, or be able to empathize better, because I think part of what we're doing at the moment is you're not able to see people's facial expressions, and you're not able to maintain eye contact as well as you might do otherwise, because you're trying to hold this massive microphone on a stick so that you don't get too close to people. And I think what we're going to have to start looking at is how we go back to working by ourselves. Because at the moment, I haven't done a report by myself, a self-shooting report, for quite some time now. Well, I don't think I've done anything other than a few what we call GVs of Cockermouth since the beginning of the crisis. So I think we'll be looking at new ways of working and different ways of working, and I think they will be in place until everybody feels it's safe to go back to normal, if normal exists anymore.
Yeah, Bob, you spoke earlier, now potentially you could attend 3 council meetings in 3 different places in the same day. What a treat that's going to be for you. But it's easy access to information. But do you think you might lose a bit in terms of just getting a feel of the mood of the meeting, which can often tell you as much as the information that's been imparted?
Yeah, definitely. And like you were saying about 300 people watching online, that's not the same as 300 people being in the public gallery, creating an atmosphere, making a noise. And I've been to sort of council meetings where there are a lot of people there because they're particularly interested in an issue that's being discussed, and making a lot of noise about it, clapping, applauding, that sort of thing. And actually that kind of adds to the whole sense that this is something important that's being discussed. It may have an effect on the councillors who are actually in the council chamber discussing the issue. They get a sense of how important it is to local people. So you definitely lose something when you can't see people face to face. We're social beings, aren't we? And an awful lot of the way we interact and the way we function revolves around seeing people, being able to touch and see people's body language and their facial expressions, and all of that is now completely absent from our lives, except for the people that we live with. So and that's true of any sphere, whether it's politics or whether it's any other story that you might be covering. A huge dimension of it is taken away, and we're just kind of getting used to that now. But I think it certainly means that there's something missing there, and we'll certainly want to recapture that when we are in a position to go to something that's more approaching normality than what we are at the moment.
Fed, as we move towards easing restrictions and coming out of the lockdown, we've already spoke about the great things that's happening in the community, and particularly local businesses, how they've supported people and with services they've continued to provide. Economically, life's going to be tough, and it's going to be important to me to encourage people to support these local businesses as we get back near normality. What role do you think the media can play in supporting that type of initiative to get people to shop local, buy local, and support local businesses in as many aspects as they can?
Yeah, well, we've already, I'm sure ITV and BBC, I've seen they've done similar things. We've launched a campaign called There For You, where we are giving businesses a space to promote themselves in our publications. And as I was saying earlier, you know, we try and speak about them as much as possible. So it is tough for local businesses, and that's why we try and do as much as we can to get them this visibility. You know, for example, we have a feature which is Trader of the Week, or we have a Reader's Choice where we ask people after the lockdown, you know, what takeaway would you want to go to? It is going to be tough, and it's impossible to say how that will affect us long term, both economically but socially as well. I mean, one of the things that's happened to the local newspapers, you know, the Whitehaven News, Times and Star, but the whole of the country really, is that local papers have been really badly affected by this situation and the restrictions, because we rely on people advertising on our paper. And if businesses are shut and they don't know when they're going to reopen, they're not, you know, firstly, they don't have anything to advertise, and secondly, they're probably trying to keep that budget aside for when the restrictions are lifted. So that has had an impact on us. Like many other businesses, we've had to make the decision, managers have had to make the decision to furlough some members of staff, and also take other measures to try and save a little bit of money. We've had an issue with people being unable to access our papers, either because shops are shut or because they're shielding. So we have a number of initiatives as well to help people access news. For example, home deliveries of the newspapers. But also we're asking people to contribute to what they can read online on our websites. We still recognise that obviously people need access to certain types of information. For example, all the coronavirus news is free to read on our website. However, for other types of news, people can read 20 articles for free. Then they can register and read a further 20 articles, and then we ask them to contribute roughly £1 a week to continue to read that news online, because, you know, we still need the systems and the journalists and the manpower to keep producing this content. And, you know, with the drop in advertising, it could really be difficult, and it's what we have to do to ensure that we're here for the future.
Yeah, Sam, I guess, you know, as we emerge out of lockdown, a lot of your stories are going to be featured around the economic fight back and the economic recovery in the areas that, you know, is that what you're anticipating yourself?
Absolutely, very much, very similar really to what we covered in the aftermath of all the flooding we've had over the years. It's about how people are engaging with the new norm and trying to build their lives, their livelihoods back up. I mean, obviously, tourism has been a massive story for us right from the beginning. We're seeing the impact in the Lake District and beyond, you know, wider Cumbria too. And it's, you know, it's worrying. You know, we live here, we work here. We don't want to lose some of the businesses that we've been dealing with for years. And I think it is, as Federica was saying, it is really important to make sure we support where we can those businesses going forward as they come out of this and see where they are and let people know how people are struggling and what's open, what's not open, how things are different. Yes, you can still go here, but you have to do it this way or that way. I mean, obviously at ITV, it's slightly different to newspapers in that we are bound by the rules of Ofcom. So, you know, we have to make sure every piece is very much balanced. But obviously we live here, we're local to here. So it's the local stories that we'll be telling with the local businesses. And, you know, I'm sure we all agree, we really hope that those businesses that we all know and love are still there when this is all over.
Bob, as we move out of lockdown, I guess you'll be hoping that we move back into the political combat that was going on before, where you're getting the differing opinions of the various parties and non-parties that participate in local democracy.
If you mean moving back to, you know, a whole year of stalemate over Brexit and people doing battle over those kind of issues that become very divisive and partisan. I'm sure there's lots of people who would wish for that not to happen. I mean, it will be interesting to see what the kind of long-term effect of this is. Do we kind of just revert to normal and go back to the kind of perhaps more partisan clashes that we normally see between politicians, or does this set the tone for some time to come? I mean, of course, it is a crisis that is going to last for a very long time, not just in terms of the lockdown now and the efforts to find a vaccine, but obviously the economic impact and people losing their livelihoods and just the sort of sheer human cost of it as well is going to be felt for a very long time to come. So I think that will have an effect on the tone of politics for quite some time, maybe even right through until the next general election. We'll have to see. But no, I think that I don't think anyone's necessarily craving a return to the tone of politics, the way it was, back in the days before this. And actually, maybe it's been a bit of a refreshing change for people.
Yeah, it could be. How difficult or not is it getting access to people who you need to speak to get the news, Federica?
It's been easier in a way, and it's been more difficult in others. For example, more people are at home, so if you're trying to get them on the phone or you message them on social media, it's easier to get them because they're not traveling to work and that kind of stuff. But in other ways, it can be more difficult. It's easier for people to ignore you, first of all, because if they know you're trying to get them on the phone, they can just not answer. And it's not as though you're going to bump into them anytime soon. So that happens. But, some things have changed for the better. As Bob was saying, you can be at home and you can be you can attend as many council meetings as you need because you're not travelling between one and the other. And the same is for court. If you've ever been to court, there's a lot of time wasting in between cases, waiting for people to be ready, and that's not happening. The judge is ready, the case goes ahead, and it seems to be working in a little bit more of an efficient way in that sense. But then you miss all the things that just happen to you, and that's the thing that I'm missing as a local reporter. You go out shopping and someone stops you while you're picking up some tomatoes and just tells you a very random story. All of a sudden they're in the paper. Those chance meetings is what I'm missing. So it's working and it's not working, and it's working in a very different way.
So same question to you. Sam, are you having any difficulty getting to speak and getting people on the programme than you had before?
I think sometimes it depends on what the subject matter is. I mean, obviously for us, we need to either be able to go out and film them, or we need to be able to get them via video conferencing. And some people just don't have the technology available. They don't have a laptop, or their phone's not up to it. So in those circumstances, that can be hard, and we'd maybe need to send out a camera to that. But on the whole, because people are wanting to get their stories out there and wanting to be heard and have got something to say, they are there and they'll answer the phone, and they are willing to change times that suit us and suit them, so that we can get the best story out there. So I think in terms of as long as people actually want to speak to us and want to be part of the story, then yeah, we're the same as Federica. We're having no problems getting hold of people.
Bob, it'll be a bit different for you, dealing largely with politicians. They all want on the telly and the radio, don't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't know if you're thinking of anyone in particular there, Mike. But no, I mean, people have been very good in terms of coming forward and speaking. I think that most politicians appreciate that this is a time when people need to hear from them and need leadership, and so they've been very forthcoming. We've certainly had all of our local MPs on the radio recently, and local councillors as well have been forthcoming and you know, some of the public officials, people who are in charge of the response in Cumbria, have been very forthcoming. We've had the likes of Colin Cox and Andy Slattery on the radio on a very frequent basis, delivering all that sort of vital information to people. So no, you know, thanks to people who've kind of understood that speaking to the media is a big part of how to tackle this crisis, because there needs to be sort of official information out there for people. Otherwise, you know, there's a vacuum, and then that's when sort of rumour and misinformation takes hold, and that's not what any of us want.
Well, I think today, you know, people will appreciate that the media's spoke to them. You know, I really appreciate you all joining me today. You know, for me and my authority, and you know, the same as other council authorities, we're trying to communicate. You know, communication is everything, and more important than ever at a time like this. And you know, I want to thank you for what you do with your various media outlets in getting that information out there. And it's been really interesting to hear a different perspective from you guys today on how it's impacting your role. But you know, we appreciate you bringing us the news, certainly with a very local element, and I really do appreciate you all joining me today. So Sam, Federica, Bob, thank you all very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.